started off the play with a man named Gloucester talking to another man named the Earl of Kent. What Gloucester is complaining to the Earl of Kent about is his son Edmund the bastard, basically saying that he's ashamed of him and he wishes he didn't have a bastard son. But come to find out, Edmund was there the entire time. Then we cut to the other half of the story. King Lear is getting old and wants to divide up his land to his 3 daughters. To see who gets what land, or the most land, he wants each of them to tell him how much they love him. The first daughter, Gonril, tells him she loves him so much, nobody could love him as much as she does. The second daughter, Regan, says she loves him more than Gonril, and so much more. Lastly, the youngest daughter, Cordelia, says that she loves her father with all her heart, but nothing more, for she is the only honest one. Lear then gets mad, giving her no dowry, but the King of France still takes her as his bride, and they leave. He then divides the land evenly between Gonril and Regan. But the Earl of Kent is upset, and tells Lear that he is wrong, so Lear tells him if he isn't out of the kingdom in 10 days, then he will be killed. Then in the next act, we go back to Edmund and see what his true plan is. He hates that he's a bastard and that he can't acquire land like his brother Edgar can, so he writes a letter and gives it to his father, saying Edgar wrote it. Gloucester reads the letter and is furious, for the letter says that Edgar wants him dead and he wants his land. Gloucester becomes angry and demands that Edmund bring Edgar to him immediately. Edmund finds Edgar, but tells him to run, so Edgar does. Then the play goes back to Gonril, and we see that Lear has made a bad choice in giving her the land. She basically lied about all her love that she had for him. She is angry at all of Lear's knights at her castle and wants them gone. She then tells Oswald, her servant, that she doesn't want to speak to her father. Lear, not knowing this, makes a trip to Gonril's castle and finds that he can't get inside. This is when he finds a beggar, who is actually Kent in disguise, and Kent becomes his servant along with this fool who will come in later. Mad, he leaves and heads off to Regan's kingdom so he can be treated right. What Lear doesn't know is that Gonril has sent Oswald ahead to give a letter to Regan explaining that Lear is on his way and that Regan and her husband should come over to Gonril's. The story then goes back to Edgar and Edmund. Edmund tells Edgar to run again as their father is coming, but as Edgar is running away, Edmund cuts himself with his sword to look like Edgar tried to murder him. Then Gonril shows up along with Regan, who came after receiving the letter, and Regan's husband, the Duke of Cornwall, who assures Edmund that he will find Edgar and bring him to justice. During this time, Kent, still dressed as a beggar, and Oswald start to fight until Edmund and the rest of the group come and break it up. Then Kent is put into stocks to humiliate him, and being the king's servant, to humiliate the king. Lear shows up and sees Kent's in the stocks and gets super angry. Lear then pleads with Regan to come and talk to him, but she says she's too tired. But after a while, she meets with him, but says she's on Gonril's side, then sends him away, saying he can't keep any of his servants. He then leaves crying, and this is when Lear starts to go insane. King Lear and his fool are now left in the rain with nowhere to go, but Kent returns and tries to get them to shelter. During the storm, Edmund and Gloucester are talking about a secret letter that Gloucester obtained saying that the King of France is going to invade. Cordelia, now the Queen of France, wants to bring Lear back into power. Gloucester says that he and Edmund should be on Lear's side, so Gloucester leaves to try and find Lear. This brings great satisfaction to Edmund. He leaves right away to tell the Duke of Cornwall of his father's treason. Then the story goes to this hut that Lear, Kent, and the fool find. Edgar is dressed up as a beggar called Crazy Tom, and him and Lear have a long, weird conversation as Lear is starting to really lose his mind. Edmund finds Cornwall and gives him the secret letter about the invasion. Cornwall gives him the title of Duke, and Edmund finally got his dream, the title and land that shouldn't be his because he is a bastard. Due to this information, and Edmund talking to him about Gloucester's treason, he goes out and looks for Gloucester. But before this, Gloucester finds the hut and talks to Lear and says that they should go out and try to find Cordelia and her army. But Gloucester decides to go back home, where Cornwall is there and arrests him for working with Lear. Gonril, now knowing of the French army's plans, sends an army of her own to fight the French. Gloucester is then interrogated to see where his loyalties lies, where at this point Cornwall gouges out Gloucester's eyes, while Gloucester tells him how Edmund has tricked them all. One of Cornwall's servants comes to stop this, injures Cornwall, but then Cornwall kills the servant. Gloucester is then let go, and Cornwall is fatally wounded and will soon die. Goneril then talks to her husband, the Duke of Albany, about sending troops to fight Lear and the French. But Albany disagrees with her and says that Lear has been right all along. But come to find out, Goneril doesn't even like Albany. She wants Edmund. Then she learns of Cornwall's death and becomes jealous of Regan for being signal. But then we learn that Regan is also in love with Edmund. Edgar, still dressed as Crazy Tom, finds Gloucester walking around the forest and brings him to this imaginary cliff where he has Gloucester jump off. At the bottom of this cliff, Edgar pretends to be a different person and tells Gloucester that a demon was trying to get him to jump. This was all in hopes of getting Gloucester over his suicidal tendencies. Then comes in a completely insane Lear running from the French army soldiers that are trying to catch him. Then Oswald comes and tries to kill Gloucester, but Edgar kills Oswald instead. Lear at this time is then caught and is sleeping with Cordelia at his side. He wakes up and seems to have got his mind back together. Just as a battle is about to take place, Regan tells Edmund that she loves him and that he should stay away from Goneril. Edgar then gives Albany a letter about his wanted death and says that a champion will appear, and if the champion is to win, it will prove that the letter to be true. The French lose, and Lear and Cordelia are captured, and Edmund says to bring them to jail where they will be executed. Then Regan and Goneril start to fight over who gets Edmund. Albany accuses Edmund of treason. Then Regan starts to become sick because Goneril has been poisoning her. Edgar and Edmund start to fight to see who is right in God's eye. Regan is then carried off and soon dies. Edgar defeats Edmund. Now that the champion has won, Albany shows Goneril her love letters that she sent to Edmund, and then she goes and kills herself because of all the grief. Edgar then tells Edmund who he really is, and Edmund tells him to go save Lear and Cordelia, but then he dies. Lear then comes in carrying an already dead Cordelia. Kent reveals his true identity, but Lear, crazy with grief, dies. Ken says he will join him soon. Then in the end, it is only Albany and Edgar who are left to rule Britain.